wondered why the Disney characters have the colors they have and not other ones? Well, personally, I wonder about that all the time. And not only with Disney, also with video games, other movies, cartoons. And the other day I was watching Snow White and I couldn't help but wonder about the characters' color palettes and what they say about them. A lot of image consultants have used the Disney princesses to explain the system of 4 and 12 seasons. However, what many people don't know is that this can be done with any of the other characters. Sure, the princesses are a great example because they are very easy to identify. But this idea of using the Disney characters to explain the color palettes of every season can also be applied to the sidekicks, to the kings and queens, and of course to my favorites, the villains and their sidekicks. And best part is that analyzing their color palettes does not only reveal details about their physics, but also about the psychology of every character and how does it relate to the color palette they have. The plan is to do this with all the Disney princesses movies. But today we're going to start with the first one of them all that was released on the 30s.
Snow White.
Let's start with our protagonist. Snow White is known by the contrast between her black hair and her porcelain skin.
Lips red as the rose, hair black as ebony, skin white as snow.
And this plus her light brown eyes takes her to the bright palette, making her a frontier between spring and winter. In order to figure out her predominant palette, we can do a simple exercise that's about closing our eyes and when we open them, observe. What did you see first? Her skin, her eyes, or her hair? In my case, the first thing that pulls my eyes when I open them is her dark hair, which would mean that this would be her focal point or the part of her colorimetry that's most important to harmonize with if she changes clothes. And since black is a deep, cool and bright color, this takes her to the winter palette, same as her skin, because despite it being light, it's a very bright color, a very uniform one, and also a very cool tone. And it's the warm color of her eyes that gives her the frontier with spring, which means that Snow White's palette is bright winter. By the way, there is one character that shares this palette. Can you guess who? Snow White's personality shows this duality between dark and light because despite the fact that she does have the naiveness and kindness from most of the Disney princesses, she isn't as innocent as she seems. First of all because of her joyful and a bit naughty nature, but on the other hand, because due to the abuses of the queen, she's not unfamiliar at all with the darkness and evil in the world. And actually something funny is that Grimhild is so determined to prevent Snow White from popping out that she even dresses her with autumn colors that do not belong to her palette and therefore make her look much more dull than her dressing gown. We can see that Snow White's naiveness is not absolute in many moments of the movie. When the hunter is about to kill her, of course her first reaction is to get frightened. But once she sees him stopping, instead of running away in fear, she stays to confront him and ask him why he was going to do it. With this, she doesn't only show that she's brave enough to confront him, but also that she understands murder at least enough to know that no one kills for no reason and that if he was about to do it, there has to be a motive behind.
Hi-ho, hi-ho.
Later on, when she goes to the Seven Dwarfs' cabin, first of all we see her naive and kind side because she goes inside the house of 7 strangers that she doesn't even know if she can trust, and she starts cleaning up for them, no matter the amount of mess she has to deal with. But then we see her naughty and a bit annoying side when she realizes that the 7 dwarfs' hands are dirty. We can actually see her enjoying and having fun while inspecting their hands, and even if it's in a friendly way, she also enjoys to shame them by saying how dirty they are and teasing them by telling them that if they do not wash their hands, they will not have dinner. Oh, and not to mention that she loves her ass out when Grumpy hits himself on the door, and this also is one of the reasons why at the beginning he cannot stand her. And actually on the original tale, Snow White has a very bad time with the dwarfs for entering their house without knowing them, but that's not for this video. Next day when the 7 dwarfs go to work, Snow White has a tender gesture with them by kissing their foreheads. And when Dumpy tries to make her kiss his lips, she gently leans his head so she can kiss him on the forehead instead. This may not sound too extraordinary, but if we remember that the character is 14 years old and that given her abusive familiar scheme, I don't think she's received any sexual education, it is a bit notorious that she does understand that a kiss on the forehead has a different connotation from a kiss on the lips. And later with Grumpy, we see that Snow White does notice that despite his hostile attitude, he doesn't dislike her entirely and even worries about her and her safety. Not to mention that she also notices that despite him playing hard to get, he does want her to kiss him. Besides, she also seems to understand why Doc and the rest of the dwarves advise her to not trust anyone and to not let anyone in. But then, is it naiveness that makes her open the door to Grimhild? Of course she doesn't know who's under the disguise, but we can see that from the moment she sees her on the window, her first reaction is to get scared, which shows us that at least her most primary instincts are well aware of the danger. And actually, we can see that Snow White is not comfortable with the old lady in the first place, and that more than once she tries to kindly ask her to leave and to not try the apples. But everything changes when she sees her getting attacked by the animals, because this brings out Snow White's true weakness: her excessive kindness and her need for love. All of this makes her let her into the house to take care of her, when the old lady makes her believe that her heart is hurting, which also shows us that her kindness clouds her judgment. Because if someone has bad intentions towards her, no matter how sick they are feeling, what she should do would be to keep her distance. And later, her warm nature and love for the prince take her to the sleeping dead when she bites on the apple, because she believes, or wants to believe, that it will make her wishes come true and fulfill her dream of finding love. Of course, her actions were naive, but they do not come from the typical teenage crush, but from a deep need to receive the love she's been lacking all her life, and that she was starting to feel with Prince Florian. If we remember the fact that one of her first affective relationships tried to kill her, it would be unrealistic and absurd to ask Snow White to be very centered when it comes to love, and it's actually very understandable for desperation to lead her to believe, or to want to believe, that a magical apple can change her life. By the way, I don't think I will dedicate a whole video to the prince, because we know very little about him in the movie and there are no prequels or sequels to know more information about. But one thing worth mentioning is that he shares the same season as Snow White, because his dark brunette hair and sapphire eyes take him to winter, but his peach-toned skin gives him a frontier with spring. So same as Snow White, Prince Florian is a bright winter, and therefore we don't need to wonder whether they would be compatible as a couple. In any case, they may be too compatible. Well, that's all for today. As you can see, the personalities of the characters are much more complex than you can see in a first impression, and their colors are the reflection of their traits. If you like this video, don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be seeing you soon to analyze the antagonist of this story in the second part of Snow White's analysis. So if you haven't already, don't forget to click on the bell so YouTube notifies you when I upload it.